Welcome into One of One Sports. We just had a great weekend of college football, so let's do our week two analysis and takeaways. So first off, we'll start off with a little right wrong. Gonna give you a couple takes I was right about this weekend, a couple I was wrong about, and we're gonna focus on things I won't talk about in other parts of the video. For example, I was very wrong about NC State versus Tennessee, but we're not gonna talk about that right now. We'll talk about that when I talk about the Tennessee game later on. But so first, here we are. What I was right about was Clemson. So they defeated App State 66 to 20. They looked great. Specifically, Cade Klubnik looked great. The offense was very explosive. They had arguably the best half of football under Dabo Swinney that Clemson's ever had in that first half. Klubnik didn't even have to play the second half. I think they had like 56 by halftime. And I mean, they were just scoring at will. The offense looked more explosive than it has since Trevor Lawrence left, which has been a big complaint. Bryant Wesco looked great. TJ Moore looked good. Antonio Williams looked good. Um, Everything. I mean, Phil Maffa broke a big run. The offense just looked like they were more dynamic. And I'd kind of been saying this. It was that this is a young team with young, talented receivers who are going to improve, with a quarterback who, he's a junior now, but he's still talented. He's still getting better. And you weren't going to see all the benefits of a second season under Garrett Riley in week one because you were going up against the best team in the country in Georgia. But once you get past Georgia, and now you play a team like App State, most people think is a pretty good group of five team. I'm sure some people took them to make the playoff because, a group of five team automatically gets in. And Clemson just destroyed them. And it was worse than 66-20 because the second half, Clemson wasn't really playing anymore. It was just, okay, game's over at halftime. But they just look so good. And I've been saying that I'm buying all the Clemson stock. There's no one else like Georgia on the schedule. And I think I'm right about that. I think this game proved it as much as it could in just one game. And I think Clemson is the second best team in the ACC. And still, I think Miami's the best, but I think Clemson is a very big threat to win the ACC and still make the college football playoff. All right, now something I was wrong about is Texas Tech. This was a team in the preseason I was pretty high on. I thought their quarterback Morton, I thought was going to take a pretty big step forward. The offense I thought would be explosive, and he could be like a dark horse, like sleeper Heisman contender. Wouldn't like actually win it, but he just put up big numbers and start the season kind of hot. Maybe get a little bit of buzz at some point. And then I thought their running back was great with Taj Brooks. Still think he is. I thought they had good receivers with Micah Hudson coming as a freshman, Josh Kelly transferring in, Jalen Conyers at tight end. So I thought they were going to put up a lot of points. And then last week, they did put up a lot of points, 52, but their defense was awful. And they only won 52-51 against Abilene Christian. So I thought it was concerning, but I kind of was like, the defense is going to get better in week two. I think they'll beat Washington State. And I kind of thought this score would be inverted, sort of. And yeah, it's just very wrong. The defense actually did improve, which I wasn't that wrong about. But the offense was not very explosive. It was turnover prone, a lot of mistakes. Morton didn't look great. There's just a lot of issues with a team that I thought was going to be like a solid top 25 team this year. This is something I was wrong about. All right, next up, another take I was right about. This is Iowa State beating Iowa. If you watch my game breakdown for this, I really just talked about how for Iowa State, it's just about Rocco Beck not making a big mistake or, the skill players like not fumbling or something like that. And that it was going to be a grinded out kind of game where you might not have the lead early and your offense might not be clicking early. But if you just wait it over the course of the game, you have enough skilled players that are enough skill, like at your running back in Jalen Noel and Higgins, that's good enough that at some point you'll make a big play and a couple big plays that you'll score enough to beat an Iowa team that's not going to put up a lot of points. It was just about having patience. And if you watch the game, they're down 13-0 at halftime, not moving the ball at all. And it's just exactly what I said. Over time, it's been a big complaint. Bryant Wesco looked great. TJ Moore looked good. Antonio Williams looked good. Everything. I mean, Phil Maffa broke a big run. The offense just looked like they were more dynamic. And I'd kind of been saying this. It was that this is a young team with young, talented receivers who are going to improve, with a quarterback who, he's a junior now, but he's still talented. He's still getting better. And you weren't going to see all the benefits of a second season under Garrett Riley in week one because you were going up against the best team in the country in Georgia. But once you get past Georgia, and now you play a team like App State, most people think is a pretty good group of five team. I'm sure some people took them to make the playoff because, a group of five team automatically gets in. And Clemson just destroyed them. And it was worse than 66-20 because the second half, it wasn't really, Clemson wasn't really playing anymore. It was just, okay, game's over at halftime. But they just look so good. And I've been saying that I'm buying all the Clemson stock. There's no one else like Georgia on the schedule. And I think I'm right about that. I think this game proved it as much as it could in just one game. And I think Clemson is the second best team in the ACC. And still, I think Miami's the best, but I think Clemson is a very big threat to win the ACC and still make the college football playoff. All right, now something I was wrong about is Texas Tech. This was a team in the preseason I was pretty high on. I thought their quarterback Morton, I thought was going to take a pretty big step forward. The offense I thought would be explosive, and he could be like a dark horse, like sleeper Heisman contender. Wouldn't like actually win it, but he just put up big numbers and start the season kind of hot. Maybe get a little bit of buzz at some point. And then I thought their running back was great with Taj Brooks. Still think he is. I thought they had good receivers with Micah Hudson coming as a freshman, Josh Kelly transferring in, Jalen Conyers at tight end. So I thought they were going to put up a lot of points. And then last week, they did put up a lot of points, 52, but their defense was awful. And they only won 52-51 against Abilene Christian. So I thought it was concerning, but I kind of was like, the defense is going to get better in week 2. I think they'll beat Washington State. And I kind of thought this score would be inverted, sort of. And yeah, it's just very wrong. The defense actually did improve, which I wasn't that wrong about. But the offense was not very explosive. It was turnover prone, a lot of mistakes. Morton didn't look great. There's just a lot of issues with a team that I thought was going to be like a solid top 25 team this year. This is something I was wrong about. All right, next up, another take I was right about. This is Iowa State beating Iowa. If you watch my game breakdown for this, I really just talked about how for Iowa State, it's just about Rocco Beck not making a big mistake or, the skill players like not fumbling or something like that. And that it was going to be a grinded out kind of game where you might not have the lead early and your offense might not be clicking early. But if you just wait it over the course of the game, you have enough skilled players that are enough skill, like at your running back in Jalen Noel and Higgins, that's good enough that at some point you'll make a big play and a couple big plays that you'll score enough to beat an Iowa team that's not going to put up a lot of points. It was just about having patience. And if you watch the game, they're down 13-0 at halftime, not moving the ball at all. And it's just exactly what I said. Over time, oh, there's a big play to Jalen Noel. Oh, Higgins catches a touchdown. And then eventually, right at the very end, they make that kick to win it. And it was just about being patient and just letting the game come to them. Just like I said, that was something I was right about. Final take I was wrong about, and that is Tulane beating Kansas State. And to be honest, I don't even feel like I was that wrong about this one. I mean, Darian Mensah played great for the most part. Of course, the game losing interception, which I'll talk about in a second. But then the big one was just trying to do too much on that play, scrambling around, get stripped. Kansas State takes the lead off a scoop and score. And I think, what was it? I think Kansas State ran like 3 plays or like 4 plays or something crazy over the final like quarter. They just never had the ball. Tulane had the ball, controlled time of possession, controlled the game really. They could get pretty much whatever they wanted over the middle for most of the game, and then just that one strip sack, and then at the end, they take off the touchdown for an offensive pass interference that I thought was a bad call, and then don't give a defensive pass interference that I thought should have been called. So I thought two tough calls. One gets called, I don't think shouldn't have, goes against Tulane. Next one I think should, doesn't get called, also goes against Tulane, and then the interception happens. So kind of a tough break. But if you saw my predictions, I picked Tulane to be the Group of Five representative in the playoff, in large part because I thought they would win this game and defeat Kansas State at home. And so I was, wrong about that. They do have Oklahoma next week, which I thought they would lose to them in the preseason, but Oklahoma hasn't looked great, so maybe Tulane, it's a flip flop and they get back on track for me. But I do think Tulane's still a really good team, just like it did before. And I think they got kind of unlucky, but I was still wrong because it was a pretty big take I had that Tulane would win this game. So yeah. All right, so next up we have our biggest surprises of the weekend. And first up, we're going to have the Oregon Ducks. This is a team that I picked to go to the national championship game. Didn't have them winning it, but a lot of people had them either as their national champion or in the game or in the Final Four or something like that. I had them preseason number 2. I think the AP had them third or fourth maybe. I can't remember who was higher between them or Texas. But this team is one thing to go out against Idaho where they moved the ball up and down, but it was just like a few plays where drives would stall, some penalties. and I was thinking, it would all be fixed and they'd look fine the rest of the year, and it was just like a weird week 1 game. And I'm not surprised that Boise State was competitive. I think Boise State's a really good team. I think they have the potential to be the Group of Five playoff representative. So it's not that you struggle with Boise State, but it's the way that you struggled and the way that you won. Like you had to beat Boise State mainly because of special teams with Tez Johnson getting a punt return, and I'm forgetting who ran back the kick. It might have been I can't. It might have been Whittington. I can't remember. But because of the kickoff return, the punt return, that's really why you win this game. And then the reason you struggle is because you allow, I think, 5 sacks to Boise State. And I'm sure a lot of you heard the stat, but Oregon only allowed 5 sacks all of last season, and they allowed 5 to Boise State. So this season, they've allowed more sacks than they did all of last season. And this is an offensive line that, with a Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly, I thought was going to have great tackles and those were I thought would be like headliners of one of the best offensive lines in the country, like at least like a top 10 unit and compete to be the best of the Big Ten. But not only does it not look like one of the best units in the country, like it looks like below average offensive line. Um, and even with all their skill talent and I think a pretty good running back, if the offensive line's not better, and it wasn't as bad in run blocking, it's more so that pass protection. They're just letting the pass rush get through. It's got to get better at pass protection for Oregon uh, to compete to win the Big Ten and national title. And I'm surprised at how much they struggled with a pass rush of Boise State that's not, thought to be the most daunting of pass rushes. So yeah, that was surprising. Moving on, the Kentucky Wildcats. And this was surprising, just like Oregon in a bad way, only much, much worse. So they lost to South Carolina 31-6. Um, and again, it's not surprising you lose South Carolina. I thought it'd be a fairly competitive game. But South Carolina really struggled against Old Dominion, and their offense is not very good. And it didn't look good in this game. But Brock Vandegrift looked bad, made a lot of mistakes. And this is a Kentucky team that I thought bringing in Brock Vandegrift, who I think he might have been higher recruited than guys like Drake May, JJ McCarthy, but he was at least up there with he was top class, one of the top QBs in his class when he committed to Georgia. Definitely a 5-star guy. But he goes 3 for 10 for 30 yards and an interception, which is just ridiculously bad. And then he gets replaced by Gavin Wimsatt, who transfers in from Rutgers, and he immediately throws an interception. So Brock Vandegrift had a QBR of 1.2, and Gavin Wimsatt had a QBR of 49.5, and he went 3 for 7 for 14 yards at interception. It's just atrocious quarterback play that Kentucky got against a South Carolina defense that, yes, I think it's good, but I mean, next week Kentucky's playing Georgia. Georgia has a better defense than South Carolina. Like this could get really, really ugly. Um, and I don't want to overact, but I thought with Barry Brown, Jamori Macklin, bringing in Chip Trayanum, I was like, this offense is gonna be one of the better Kentucky offenses we've seen. And I thought Brock Vandegrift's an upgrade over Devin Leary, and maybe an upgrade over what Will Levis was. And he's not. He's not. I mean, maybe he turns this around, but it looks bad, really, really bad for Kentucky. A team that I thought was, I think, like a borderline top 25 team, probably a 6 or 7 win team in the preseason. I think I ended up going 6-6. Maybe I had them going 7-5. But I mean, they don't look like that at all. They in the SEC. I mean, Georgia is gonna destroy them next week. It's gonna be bad. I think it's gonna be really really bad. And I was just surprised because usually, and I will say this, there was a lot of self-inflicted wounds that they can correct. You can limit turnovers, but you only threw the ball 10 times with Vandegrift, and you only threw it 7 with Wimsatt, and you already had 2 interceptions. So I mean, unless they're like getting completely different quarterbacks for the future, just fixing the self-inflicted wounds that I think Coach Stoops is going to try to do isn't going to be enough for them to survive at the SEC. It's just not. And the biggest surprise of the week, I'm sure you guys know, Northern Illinois. They defeat Notre Dame 16-14. Notre Dame getting all this hype last week, coming off a huge win on the road in College Station. And we'll talk more about Notre Dame in a second. But just first, I mean, a great win for Northern Illinois. Huge win, Illinois. Sorry. Huge win for their program in general. And it wasn't fluky. I mean, they just played good defense. Notre Dame played good defense too. It was just a grind out kind of game, and Northern Illinois made the plays at the end, but they were just competitive the whole way through, like you expect a good team to do against Illinois. Defense got that interception on Riley Leonard, which set them up to win the game. But yeah, so just shout out to them. I'm not. It wasn't. I mean, it was surprising, but now that it's happened, you wouldn't say, oh, they didn't deserve to win, or that was just a weird game. They look like they belong there and could compete with Notre Dame. Now moving on to Notre Dame, a few issues here. First, for Marcus Freeman, this is all this is kind of starting to be a trend where first you lost to Marshall at home, then you lost to Stanford at home. Those were in the same year. Now you lose to Northern Illinois at home. So he's only been the coach what like 3 years now, and he's already had some really bad home losses because that Stanford team wasn't good. Um, and then you have other concerns because the passing game that was supposed to be really improved with better receivers and you bring in Riley Leonard did not look threatening at all. They got to figure out what's going on there. Why are they losing these kind of games? How can you go from beating Texas A&M on the road to looking as bad as you did against Northern Illinois? Something they got to work out. Silver lining, I don't like this, but because I am not a fan or a proponent of the 12-team playoff, but because we now have a 12-team playoff, Notre Dame very much still alive. If you get the version of the team that beat Texas A&M, just like people were saying, and you got to be careful of this because all last week it's, oh, Notre Dame's going to be favored the rest of their games. Oh, Notre Dame, they're definitely a playoff team now. I mean, who are they going to lose to? They got USC at the end of the year, but they're favored everywhere else, and they immediately lose to Northern Illinois. We don't play the games on paper, play them on the field, right? So you can't look ahead. So is that what the team was doing? And maybe were they probably buying into all the hype? Probably. But if you get back to what you were week one, you can be the team that people are hyping you up to be, running the table and still make the playoff. That's the silver lining. But obviously, really surprising loss for Notre Dame. Good win by Northern Illinois. And it was a great game. I mean, it was fun to watch. But we'll move on now. And we go to the most impressive games of the week, starting out number 3, the Nebraska Cornhuskers defeating Colorado 28-10, and really it was more dominant than the final score indicates. And like some of the other games, it's not surprising that Nebraska won. They were favored. I thought they'd win. Sure, most of you guys thought they would win. And I know a lot of people don't like Colorado or Deion Sanders. I'm pretty neutral towards it, but I don't think people can really deny. Like, I know they don't have a good running game, but I think you would expect more than 10 points when you have Shador Sanders, Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn, even some of the other receivers they have are pretty good as well. I think you expect them to at least make some plays in the passing game, and this Nebraska defense did not allow it. And for Colorado, I mean, your offensive line hasn't got better. Your defensive line maybe has gotten worse, and you're all flash. You're good on perimeter. You got some start power. Obviously, Shador, very good. Not this game, but he is a very good quarterback. But yeah, just line of scrimmage play is too bad. But and Nebraska dominated there. But I don't think people are going to say, oh, but we knew that about Colorado. They were bad last year. Well, Nebraska last year got handled by Colorado, like easily. So it just shows how much improvement they've had in a year. They've gotten better on line of scrimmage. The defense still very good enough to hold Colorado to 10, and it was 3 for most of the game. They got a pick 6 as well. Just great performance by the defense. And I mean, if they look so good, they could be one of the best units in the Big Ten. And the offense looks pretty good too. And we'll talk more about it later. But Nebraska, they could be a threat in the Big Ten. All right, next most impressive win, Tennessee NC State, 51-10. And this is a game I picked NC State to win. Needless to say, I was wrong. Well, let's talk a little bit more about why I was wrong. What was my thought process? Where did I go wrong here? So I thought that NC State was really well coached, especially defensively, going up against a quarterback making only his 3rd career start, and I thought he would make some key mistakes that would lead to NC State capitalizing on turnovers and winning the game. And I thought NC State had really good wide receivers that could expose a secondary of Tennessee that's kind of the weak point of their team. And I thought NC State's O-line would hold Tennessee's defensive line in check to give Grayson McCall time. So let's see, was I close on these? Well, if we think about the first one, I think you're looking at the first quarter. Nico makes that interception. NC State makes the big play then with Kevin Concepcion. They're moving down the field. They're running the ball. The O-line started to look better. And I'm like, this is what I thought was going to happen. This is going exactly how I thought it would. I'm going to get this right. And then Grayson McCall throws the pick 6, and then the game just completely opens up from there. It's over. So it's funny because in the first quarter, I still thought I was right. It was going exactly how I thought it would. And then that one pick 6, momentum swings completely, and then NC State is done after that. What I was really wrong about, the O line did not hold up very well. So that was disappointing for me to see because I thought NC State would be like a fringe playoff contender, and I thought one of their strengths was actually their O line. Did not hold up. Um, and then the play calling, not great. There were times they should have ran the ball, like on the pick six, and instead they throw the ball with Grayson McCall, who also I thought his experience, he would stop turning the ball over as much, stop making so many big mistakes. Doesn't look like he's done that. So overall, I was disappointed by the O line, the play calling, and Grayson McCall. But let's talk about Tennessee. Tennessee, they look like a really, really good team. Threat in the SEC for sure. Uh, Nico didn't play his best game, but we know he's, like I said, he's only his third career start. I still think Nico's going to be awesome. Um, and it's just that it was a young quarterback in his first really big game. So I expected there to be bumps, but the fact they win this much with Nico not playing his best game, that's just even more impressive. The secondary doesn't even look like it's really a weak point, and the D line looks really good. So Tennessee now looks like they have a legit defense, and we know how good their offense could be with Josh Heupel play his play calling, one of the best offensive minds in the country. Nico, I think, is going to become one of the best quarterbacks in the country. The weapons are good. I mean, this team looks legit. And I think I may have been too low on them in the preseason. I still had them ranked, but I think I picked them to go either like 8-4 or 9-3. And one of their games I picked them was to lose this game. Obviously, they won that. But I mean, this team looks a lot better than I thought. I did not think the defense would be this good. And I'm just really impressed by this team overall. And the SEC now with Georgia looks great. Alabama didn't look great this weekend. Talk about that in a second. But you think Alabama's still great. Missouri, we think is really good. Oklahoma struggled a little bit, but they could still be really good. Oh, Texas great. Tennessee, but so it's just Ole Miss. It's becoming like, oh wow, there's a lot of really really good teams at the top here. So it'll be fun to see them play and how it all works itself out. Speaking of Texas, our number one most impressive one of the week, at least in my opinion, I could see how someone would think it's Tennessee. I personally thought it was Texas defeating Michigan because I value beating Michigan, who, yes, I know they're not the same team, but still the reigning national champion. And I value beating that team more than I value beating NC State. Even though the scoreboard might not indicate it, really just as dominant as Tennessee's win. And what was really impressive, I knew Texas O line was good, but I thought that there would be some run stopping issues because of losing Murphy and Sweat, and there weren't. And I'm sure Michigan's O line's probably not as good as I thought it was, which probably contributed to that. But still, I think Michigan, a team that over the past 2 years has been known for just being so physical on the lines of scrimmage, is getting absolutely manhandled by Texas on both lines of scrimmage. Not, I mean, I will say Texas had a really good game plan to neutralize Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, which Joel Klatt was kind of breaking down. If you were watching the game, and just they would when those guys were in, Texas would go on the outside. When it came out, that's when Texas would be able to run the ball. And it was just a really good game plan by Sark. But that's another thing. Texas clearly outcoached Michigan, which yes, Michigan's inexperienced on the coaching staff after losing Harbaugh. So really, maybe there's a lot of factors that play into this that make the Tennessee win more impressive because Texas had so many advantages. But I think we only see these advantages now because of how Texas was good, how good they were during the game. And I didn't think they would outcoach Michigan by this much. I didn't think they'd be able to out physical Michigan by this much. I did think they win, but I thought it would be closer. I thought home field would matter more, and it just didn't. Texas was just dominant, and I was just thoroughly impressed. Um, and I mean, Texas definitely could win the SEC. They're that good. But moving on, finally, to our biggest takeaways from week two. Our biggest takeaways from week two in college football. Number three, the Big Ten could be more open than I thought, maybe. And this because I think you look at Ohio State is really what's looming here. They haven't been tested yet, so they could actually just be like some juggernaut, definitely on the table. And the Big Ten's actually not open at all; it's just them. But that's the maybe part. It's we've seen Oregon, so I say let's say it this way: in the preseason, what most people thought was like, okay, Oregon, Ohio State, top of the Big Ten, Michigan, Penn State, second tier of the Big Ten. Then third tier, I'm sure. Like I thought USC. I know people like Nebraska. I think I had them sixth. Maybe you like Wisconsin or Iowa, but it was all kind of jumbled after that. It was really like a two more, and then like a jumbled mess. Now for me, I kind of thought Michigan would be in that top tier. That's not yet, but at some point will emerge there, and I still think they could. But we're looking at right now, Oregon. doesn't look great. Michigan definitely doesn't look great. Penn State, we thought was like, oh, are they becoming great? But struggle with Bowling Green. So, they still haven't proven that they're great. And then you have teams like USC just shut out Utah State. Does USC and Lincoln Riley have a really good defense, or at least a good defense? Because we always say that's all they've ever needed. Nebraska looked really impressive. Um, so when you look at Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, maybe are not as there's not as big a separation as previously thought. And then you see Nebraska and USC emerging. It really is just okay. What is Ohio State? Because if Ohio State has a game when they finally get challenged, it's like, oh, their offensive line has some issues. Oh, Will Howard, yeah, he's not really a big time quarterback. There's a weakness there. Then it's like, okay, could USC win the Big Ten? Could Nebraska make some noise? Yeah, now you have all these crazy possibilities that before the season, I think a lot of people were just like, it's Ohio State, it's Oregon, and it could be a lot more open than that, which is a really fun idea and would be really fun to watch. And I do think by the end of the year, um, it'll still be those top four teams that we thought. But right now, that's definitely not a guarantee, and I could definitely be wrong about that. And it's something I'm big takeaway that I'm excited to see how it goes. Number two, the Big 12 could be chaotic. Um, I think Utah looked very good, but Cam Rising got his hand hurt, so that's something to look out for. Then who were the other top teams? Kansas State, I thought should have lost, but at the very least was pushed to the edge by Tulane, and I think their defense showed they had some issues, as well as the passing game with Avery Johnson. So there's question marks there. Arizona's a team I really like, but their defense had questions in week. Or defense didn't look great in week one against New Mexico, and then in week two, struggled against NAU, which is a little bit concerning. I mean, you win, but not what you would like to see. Oklahoma State really struggled with Arkansas, ended up winning in overtime. That maybe Arkansas is just better than we think or we thought, but Arkansas is at least projected to be one of the worst teams in the SEC. So that's like, okay, is Oklahoma State maybe not as good as I thought they were, especially on the line of scrimmage where it didn't look like they could just lean on an Arkansas team that's not known for their run defense. They have good edge rushers, but I thought Oklahoma State would be able to establish a little bit more of a run game. Then you look around the conference, Texas Tech, not as good as I thought they were. We don't really know what TCU is. Kansas goes down to Illinois. Jalen Daniels did not look good, especially not as good as he's looked in the past. West Virginia could still be good, but obviously they didn't look very good against Penn State. And I think you just go through a conference and everybody has question marks, um, some more than others, except, well, I was going to say, except maybe Utah, if Cam Rising comes back, maybe they just emerge as a clear front runner. And I do think UCF could be really good still. But I think you go through right now, every team has question marks. And that means there's probably no great team. But week in, week out, I think it's going to be so unpredictable, so chaotic, so fun to watch that it'll be a really exciting league. But I still think it probably means there's only one team coming out for the playoff. But I mean, who really cares, right? It's going to be fun to watch. Pretty much any team could be in the race. Oh, Iowa State looked good. I was gonna say that. I forgot to mention that they beat Iowa, but definitely still there question marks there with some of the offensive limitations. Um, but they were playing very good defense in Iowa. But overall, I think so many teams are going to be in contention. So many fan bases will have hope to make the playoff from this conference, even if I think it probably means you're going out very soon. But it should be exciting. That's my takeaway. And my final takeaway is it's just going to be a survive and advance kind of season. I mean, first off, you look at Alabama, who I know the final score I think was 42-16, but if you watch the game, it was tight, I think, going into the fourth quarter, and Alabama pulls away like really late. USF actually has a chance to go for a fourth down at 21-13 in Alabama territory. I think it might maybe inside the 10 or at least inside the 20 for sure. And they end up kicking the field goal, and then Alabama immediately scores with Ryan Williams, and then the game breaks open from there. Let's say South Florida goes for it, scores a touchdown. Now Alabama's still in a fight, but they survive. Penn State down at the half to Bowling Green. Bowling Green has the ball with a chance to go win the game. The defense finally, steps up and does something in that game. Well, they shut him out in the second half, but they get the interception, so they survive Bowling Green. Oklahoma survives a scare from Houston, which was just like a grinded out like dogfight game, which was unexpected from a Houston team that I don't think is very good. Um, Obviously, Notre Dame did not survive, which was a kind of theme here. Is that it's just if you survive these tough games, just good for you because someone's not going to. This week it was Notre Dame. I'm sure we'll see someone next week. Oregon still survived. And just the point of this is if you survive now, all you got to do is survive now so you can get better later. Because every team's going to improve. But if you can win while you're still improving, then you're still going to be alive to play your best ball down the stretch and have important games for like playoff implications, conference championship implications. Whereas if you're losing now and you figure it out later, and now you're not able to attain the goals you set for yourself before, you'll end up having a disappointing season. So it's all about just surviving and advancing in these early parts of the season where a lot of teams have question marks. So those are my takeaways. It was a great week too. I thank you guys all for watching this video. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you all next week.